Raider Nation, you got a problem on your hands, and not a good one. But we'll get there. We will get there because, well, for the Las Vegas Raiders in 2022, they were coming off the heels of an inspirational and wild 2021. I talked about it in length, but in a nutshell, a lot of controversy early in the season, and a lot of terribleness during that season, but they made it work. They put off this crazy run, and they made the playoffs, and even though they came up short, there are some things to look forward to in 2022, at least. So they followed up a inspirational 2021 by hiring former New England Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels to be their new head coach. And it was certainly an interesting decision to be the least, because Josh McDaniels didn't exactly have a good first run as head coach in Denver, but they were going to give him a second chance after many, many years. And then, of course, they made the big trade to go and get Davante Adams, Derek Carr's former teammate from Fresno State. Not Fresno. I think it's just Fresno. But anyway, they went to go and trade former Green Bay Packers receiver Davante Adams and, reunite him with Derek Carr. So, it honestly didn't cost too much, so that was at least good for the Raiders. And it seemed like, just like with Denver, they were going to at least try and challenge the Kansas City Chiefs in that AFC West. But, man, it was just the exact opposite of what they were in the late season run of prior. Deflated, and uninspirational, as well as blowing too many leads, man. And I know people were saying about Derek Carr, it's like, oh, it's not his fault. It was the defense. And yes, there's some degree to that. The defense was bad. It was awful in 2022. They couldn't hold the lead that the Raiders, yes, Derek Carr did, and the offense did good at times. But the problem was late, when they were up so big, they got too conservative. They got too conservative on offense, and that's why the defense, for as good as the offense was, the defense was still consistently bad for all 4 quarters. So this led to a very disappointing start. They were 2-7 at the midway point, and even though they caught fire, they got a couple wins here and there, it was too late for them. By New Year's Day, they called it quits. The Raiders front office surprisingly shut down Derek Carr for the final 2 games of the season. People were pissed about it. Derek Carr was pissed about it. He even left the team. So that's for as motivational and as humble Derek Carr is. I mean, this is not a knock on the guy, but it kind of like shows what kind of character, some character he has. But again, not just a knock on him. So they go and play Jared Stidham, see what he has, and it was a mixed bag. So not exactly a good follow-up to an inspirational last couple of games in 2021. They end their season 6-11, and a good chunk of their losses were by a single score, and they blew a lot of double-digit leads last season. So again, like I said, mainly due to how conservative and complacent both Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr were, and it affected the defense. It was not good. So when you go into this season, when you go into this offseason, there was going to be a lot of uncertainty. What were they going to do with Derek Carr? And if they did something with Derek Carr, who was going to be the new quarterback? So a lot of decisions had to be made. The first one is, what are we going to do with Derek Carr? So obviously they shut down Derek Carr for a reason. They're going to find a trade partner. Unfortunately, by the time the Super Bowl came around, no one wanted to trade for him. And news later found out that Derek Carr didn't want to waive his no trade clause that he had in his contract. So what did they do? They released him 2 days after the Super Bowl, before that deadline. So Derek Carr gets released, and then a month later, he goes to be a New Orleans Saint. And then everyone assumes that they're going to go and draft a quarterback. Maybe go trade up to get a quarterback. Nope. Raider Nation, your problems just are about to begin, because they replaced Derek Carr with another broken car, because they went out to go and get, ladies and gentlemen, get ready, Jimmy Garbage Fail. Jimmy Garoppolo, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, from my problem to your problem. Welcome to Raider Nation, Jimmy Garoppolo. So, oh man. I mean, let me just preface this by saying Jimmy Garoppolo, I like him as an individual. There are some things that I like about him. He can throw a nice ball in tight situations, in tight windows, in a good solid deep ball. Problem is the dude just can't stay healthy, and he is turnover prone. And there's just a lot of things that really makes me rattle about Jimmy Garoppolo. That, well, Raider Nation, this is what Mark Davis wanted. This is what Josh McDaniels wanted, and now he's your problem. That's all I'll say about that. So anyway, yeah, they went out to go get Jimmy Garoppolo when he was still injured, and apparently now he's not going to be playing any preseason. He's not going to be training minicamp. Well, at least that's what I'm aware of. And yeah, he's so uncertain to play. It's still uncertain if he will play week 1. So we'll see about that. They also franchise tagged running back Josh Jacobs, but they didn't come to a long-term deal, and he may hold out. So, a lot of problems in Vegas right now. But on a positive note, they did trade for tight end. They did trade tight end Darren Waller to the New York Giants. Actually, I don't know if I can say that's a positive note. For a 3rd-round pick. So Darren Waller did have a bit of injury problems. So yeah, they went on to trade him for a 3rd-round pick, see what they could get out of him. But man, this was just not a good offseason for the Raiders, man. And some are optimistic about this, and I don't know, most are not. So my goal for the Raiders this coming season is that you got to lose games, man. You got to lose enough games. And I know Jimmy Garoppolo is a competitor and all that. I like that about him. But I don't know, man. I just can't see it. I just can't see it. So if you're the Raiders, you got to lose some games. You got to put yourselves into position to pick one of the top prospects next year in the draft. Like, I just can't see it with Jimmy Garoppolo. Man, I don't know how you can, but Niners fans have suffered for that. They really have. So looking at some of my team needs for the 2023 offseason, a lot of which I talked about back in February, we're pretty much redundant now. The only one that did remain relevant was they had to beef up the interior defensive line because Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, they're pretty good in 2022. The only problem was the interior was struggling, and in turn, Max Crosby and Chandler Jones were the only guys getting actual sacks, actual pressure on the exterior. So didn't do a lot of help trying to get to the quarterback. So looking at some of their offseason moves, they didn't lose a whole lot, so that's a plus. They lost Rocky Sin to the Baltimore Ravens, linebacker Denzel Perryman to the Texans. They lost one of their key receivers when Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller was out for a little bit, and that was receiver Mac Hollins. He went to the Atlanta Falcons, and Hollins, backup slot receiver, he stepped up big time when, again, Renfrow and Darren Waller were out with injuries for a good portion of the season. Looking at some of their additions to free agency, not a whole lot. They added backup quarterback Brian Hoyer. In the event, Jimmy Garoppolo is not ready to go. They also got receiver Jacoby Myers from the New England Patriots. Yeah, you all remember Jacoby Myers, that guy that was the big hero in Week 15. Yeah, for the Raiders. So, yeah, going into the draft, they did get an edge rusher by the name of Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. Defensive tackle Byron Young from Alabama. Tight end Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, so maybe he'll be the replacement for Darren Waller. And then cornerback Jacorian Bennett from Maryland. Excuse me. So looking at some these offseason moves, if you're a Raiders fan or not Raiders fan, or you're just me, a casual fan. Man. A lot to dissect here. A lot to dissect. So from my perspective, either the Raiders are really high and not in a good note on Jimmy Garoppolo, or this is going to be a clear tank for whoever's they're looking at. in next year's NFL draft. But in fairness, though, this is the Raiders after all, because nothing has gone right for them aside from 2021. I'll give them credit for that. This is by no means attacking Jimmy G, because like I said, I respect the heck out of him. He's a good individual off the field. He presents himself professionally. I respect the heck out of him. He carries himself great. But on the field, man, it's just like something doesn't click with me with Jimmy Garoppolo. I've seen it for like almost 6 years, the 5 years that he's been there. It's like, it's not there. So the Raiders must have clearly known that Jimmy has only had one fully healthy season in the 5 years that he's been with the 49ers. And he's still recovering from the foot injury that was in 2022. It's like, they must have seen that, right? When they signed him, they must have known the risk that was to come. And like I said, there are some positives. He throws fine under pressure. He makes some nice tight window throws, but he also makes a lot of boneheaded ones as well, both altered and unaltered in the pocket. And there's some times where he just doesn't know the pressure's coming. So that leads also to some turnovers. And boy, did we suffer through that too. So the defense also has concerns, even with the investments on the defensive line. It's going to be imperative that Tyree Wilson and Byron Young pan out for the Raiders because, their current interior defensive tackles, Bile Nichols and Jerry Tillery, who are going to be apparently starting, they were bad. They were bad in 2022. So if Wilson and Young struggle too, expect Chandler Jones and Max Crosby to really pick it up again. So looking at some of their potential key games in 2023, you have to go to the Mile High to start your season in Denver. You don't know if it's going to be Jimmy G or Brian Hoyer or some other quarterback for the Raiders. And then you have to go in week 2 to Buffalo to face the Bills and Josh Allen in the Bills home opener. 2 games where you don't know who's going to be the quarterback. And then after you have your week 3 opener, a home opener against the Steelers, you have to go to the Chargers in week 4 in Los Angeles. So you're only home for 1 month or one week, to be honest with you. And then you get to play Jimmy G's old team and Josh McDaniels' old team, week 6, the New England Patriots. So another big game. I mean, we don't know what you're going to get from Mac Jones and them. And then week 12, all the way down there, depending where you are, you play the Chiefs. And remember what they did to you in the final week of the season? Yeah, that was embarrassing. So my biggest questions for the Raiders entering this season obviously centers around Jimmy Garoppolo. How many games is he going to give you, Raider Nation? Like I said, he has his bright spots, but his kryptonite is his durability. If he can't stay healthy for at least most of the season, then the Raiders are going to be in trouble from the very start, especially if he can't go week 1. So this team, there's a lot of flaws. I kid you not. And it's a shame considering that you have the likes of Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Max Crosby, and if he plays, Josh Jacobs. You don't even know if Josh Jacobs is going to play in week 1. So you have to figure that out and try to convince him to come here to play. These players, it's like it could be another year where it's going to be wasted. So they could prove me wrong, like with all the teams I talked about. The Raiders could prove me wrong, but as of right now, I doubt it. When you have a lot of QB problems from the red and gold, now carrying over to the silver and black, I expect the Raiders to go 5-12, if not worse than that. And 5-12 is generous, man. See, because there's a lot of problems on this team. There really is. Even again, if you have the talent with Adams, Renfrow, Crosby, Jones, and even with a good tangible, leadership tangibles in Jimmy Garoppolo, I just can't see it. I really can't see it. Again, they can prove me wrong, but Raider Nation, you got a serious quarterback problem on your hands, and it's going to continue to carry over even going into week 1.